Today I have 11 Dollar Tree DIYs to share with you. If you are new, welcome. My name is Jennifer and this is a little bit of Common Crazy. If you are not new, I'm glad that you are back. I am so excited about all of these projects. I have grabbed some of my absolute favorite. I put them all into one video and I think there are a lot of your favorites as well based on the comments I've gotten either on YouTube or Instagram, and I really wanted to make these super accessible. If you enjoy this video, you learned something new, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. I would love to see you over on Instagram as well. It is a little bit of Common Crazy over there, just like it is here. Now let's just get right on into it. This is one of my favorite projects I have ever done. I'm using the taller and the shorter dowel rods from Dollar Tree, and then just the smaller of this set of 3 wreath rings that I picked up at Walmart for just under $3. So each of these rings are less than $1 each. Start off with, I use my miter shears in order to cut 1 inch off the 4 of the shorter dowel rods and 2 of the longer dowel rods. After that, I did go in with a fine grit sandpaper and I did sand the edges that I cut just to make sure they were nice and smooth. Now I am taking Waverly's chalk paint and ink and I'm painting all the dowels. I find the easiest way to paint them is to stick them in a piece of foam, paint as much as I can, almost all the way down to the bottom, let that completely dry, then flip them upside down and then paint the other half. If you do happen to get any of the foam on there, because it kind of will stick, it just brushes right off. So that the ring would match the dowel rods, I also painted it in Waverly's chalk paint and ink. I'm trying a new paint, well, new to me. This is DIY paint. This color is in beadboard. It is a white paint that is in it has like a blue base undertone to it that kind of makes it look like a pure white. I'm excited to be playing with new paints. I'm weird that way, but if you wanted to stick with Waverly's chalk paint and white, that's another fantastic white paint to use. Now I'm using beadboard because I have it left over. It measures 17.5 by 32. It was the perfect size for what I needed. But of course, if you already have something else lying around, if you wanted to take some Dollar Tree signs and attach them together, that would be another great idea for this project. I took some 1x2 and I cut it down to 17.5 inches in length. And then after that, I took some Waverly Wax and Antique and I'm doing a faux staining. I brush it on and then I wipe off the excess. After that, I go in with some wood glue and I glue it to the top and the bottom of the sign. Now you are absolutely welcome to go all the way around the sign and frame it out if you want to, but I felt like just doing the top and the bottom really gave it a little bit more of a modern, fresh look that I really liked, and that was the look that I was going for. This is when things are starting to really come together. I laid out my dowels in order to spell out the word home exactly where I needed them, making sure I had the spacing on both sides. And in order to keep my spacing where I need it from top and bottom, I'm actually going in with a 2x4 to give me the correct spacing from the top and my H and the bottom and my E. So make sure that you have something to help you with that spacing as well if you are recreating this sign. To attach the dowels down, I am using the gel super glue. I picked this up at Dollar Tree. You get 2, or depending on the time of year, you could get 3 in a pack. I will tell you, super glue and I have a love-hate relationship. I love how quick drying it is. I love how strong of a hold it is. I do not love how I glue my fingers together. I do not. And I can't seem to not do that. I never seem to avoid not sticking all my fingers together. And so it is a good thing I'm explaining this to you and you don't actually hear the audio as I am doing this and trying not to say things I ought not to say as I continue to stick my fingers together. Oh, super glue. How can you be so good yet such a pain in the rear end? Now this is one of those signs where I really wanted to get it done right. I wanted to make sure that things were lining up right, and I really took my time to make sure I was doing that. I wanted things to be parallel. I wanted my lines to be straight, and I am measuring and I am eyeballing things and I'm using the lines of the board in order to do that. So I started off with the H, then I have to lay down the O. After that, I go in with my M. In order to keep my M spaced out as far as everything else, I use the short ends of my E so that my M is the exact same spacing as the H and the E. And then I can get my E down. And you'll notice that I use a ruler in order to help me. I'm using the 2x4 in order to help me in order to get everything down. I will also tell you, I considered other glues in order to put this down, but I knew that I needed something that would be quick to dry. I also needed something that would have a strong hold no matter like what temperatures I used. I also wanted something that would not show its adhesive, that this would be super clean and neat in the end. And I was able to accomplish all of that by using the gel super glue, even though my fingers stuck together. So even with all the complications of sticky fingers, I honestly do feel it was the best choice of adhesive for this project. If you've ever gotten this far in a project and there's just tiny little things that you need to go in and fix up, I hope that you take the time to do it, because I feel like finishing off your projects is always something that is worthwhile. So I take a tiny little detail brush, I clean up my black paint, I clean up my white paint, make sure there's no scuffs or scratches, and this project is finished. I absolutely love it. I wasn't kidding when I said this is one of my favorite things I have ever created. Project, you're going to need 2 of these tumbling tower boxes that you can get at the Dollar Tree, and I'm using some super glue gel in order to attach them. This L ruler really helps so that you can keep your lines nice and straight, and I'm just applying a little bit of glue on the sides and then just bumping them up together. As you can see here, I'm putting 9 pieces together, alternating the dark and light colors. The boxes do come with both the dark and the light colors. Now, once I have all of my pieces together, let me show you what all I put together. For the sides of the box, I created sets of 3, and for the bottom of the box, I created sets of 11. So I have a total of 12 sets of 3, and I created 2 sets of 11, and that is all you need in order to put the box together. To assemble the box, I started by doing the very bottom, again back in with the super glue and the ruler. The reason why I chose to use super glue is that it's super fast drying and I didn't want to wait. And so, of course, choose whichever glue you want to. You could, of course, use a wood glue if you prefer, but I would absolutely strongly suggest using like an L ruler, because this is definitely not a project that you want to try to eyeball. You may also notice that I chose to do my rows opposite. So on one of the rows, I started with a dark color and ended with a dark color. On the other one, I started with a light color and ended with a light color. I just wanted that contrast. Of course, you do whatever you want. I just thought that that was fun. So I like to glue in stages instead of just putting everything together all at once. So I'm also gluing the sides together before I attach them to the bottom or the base of the box. And so as you can see here, I have one set of 3 going vertical and another set of 3 going horizontal. And I will rotate that set like that, the sets of 3 like that all the way around the box. I glued 2 sets of 3 together for the sides or the ends and 4 sets together for the sides. Again, alternating, so they will be opposite of each other. So the 2 ends will be opposite of each other and the 2 sides will be opposite of each other. And that way that horizontal and vertical will match up all the way around. I promise you, once it all comes together, it'll make a whole lot more sense, or at least visually it'll make more sense than I'm sure I'm explaining it verbally. I found it easiest to go ahead and glue my ends on first, and after I had my ends attached and the glue had set, I went ahead and I attached my sides. Now, I will tell you that these wooden tumbling tower pieces are not always exactly the exact same sizes. Most of them are, but you get these random ones that might be a little bit skinnier or a little bit shorter, and you might want to kind of move or toss some that are really standing out, or you might be okay if you have a few tiny little gaps, if you don't want to worry about filling any holes, sanding, that kind of thing. This box creates a really beautiful place for Dad to put his keys, wallet, loose change, glasses, just a really nice place for Dad. This is one of those projects that is so simple, but it will be used so often when I am decorating. I'm excited to have it, and I think that you'll see why in just a moment. So I have 3 picks here. They came from Walmart. Normally they are just under $1, but when I went to go pick up some picks recently, they all rang up for just under 80 cents. Now these are lavender. I am used to lavender being purple, so I was actually really surprised to see that these were green, just so that you know, but I love these. They're super wispy and perfect for this project. You will also need something round. This is just a little wooden round disc that I painted green using Waverly's chalk paint and fern, but anything round will do. You could even cut up a piece of cardboard. Using wire cutters, you want to go ahead and separate the tops of the picks from that really thick base of the pick, and you want to do it right there at the base and try to leave your picks as long as possible, still just getting rid of that really thick part of that base. There will be some more snipping in a minute, but that is just the beginning of your snipping. Now I'm taking my picks and I'm just bending them so that they can, just so that the little, about an inch of them will be on that base. And then I'm using my glue gun and attaching glue to that part that will be attached to the base. I am gonna do this so that I will attach one part and then go opposite of that, and then basically I'm gonna do all 4 corners, as you can see. You know, think of like a rose compass. And then I'm going to fill in between. So I'm going to do 4 first, and then I'm going to fill in those blank spots. So I'm doing all the outside edges first. And this is one reason why you paint it green, so that if you have any blank spots that you don't completely cover, it doesn't matter. It's green. It will be hidden later. You don't want this to be like hot pink underneath. That wouldn't, you know, that might not look so good. Now that you've done the outside, you actually do need to trim up your picks and make them a little bit smaller, and you're going to fill in that center, and you're working from the very center and then kind of filling in all those sparse areas. I'm actually using the SureBonder USB cordless glue gun. This thing is fantastic if you remember to charge it. Now that is a key point. You have to remember to charge it, but then it stays like warm and hot. As you see here, I just leave it going for 75 minutes. I don't have to think about it. I love it. Another option, if you didn't know it, is they have like that where you can do the little bowl of hot glue that you can just dip in. I don't have that, but eventually I want that too. It's on my like little list of things. If you work with florals a lot, that's a really good thing to have. Once I finished filling in the inside, I did go in with my remaining parts of my picks, and I just started filling in around the outside again, any gaps that I had, making sure that I was keeping things balanced. I absolutely love how this turned out because it gives me a bowl filler, but it is full, yet it has a low profile. I know that I will use this in decor so often, and I'm excited to use this. It will be a very well-used piece. There is a good chance that you already have everything you need in order to do this project on hand, and I absolutely love the outcome of this. So I have 5 different glass jars. They all came from Dollar Tree. Now, the one thing about all of these jars is that they all have a different texture on them. I really like that because what I'm going to do is spray paint them, and when I do spray paint them, that texture will pop. Before I spray paint any of my pieces, I do want to prep them by wiping them down with just some rubbing alcohol, both the outside as well as the inside, to remove any kind of dirt particles, as well as oil, just to make sure that that paint really has the best chance of sticking and staying. To spray paint these, I'm using Rust-Oleum's Ultra Matte in white. It is my favorite white to use, and it really does have such a great adherence, and I find that it does a really good job on glass. This is not my first glass that I've ever spray painted, and I've had fantastic results. So anytime I spray paint, I always like to flip things upside down first, and then I spray paint that way. I get so many questions every time I show my spray tint. You guys, if you like to spray paint ever, this is such a great investment. I love using my spray tint. It just keeps things nice and clean. It just pops up and then you fold it down. It's super quick. It doesn't take up much room. I don't have a ton of space to like house anything, and so this is like a perfect solution for me. Once I let the spray paint sit and dry, I can then flip them up the right way, and then I finish painting them out. Now, one thing I will tell you is I did spray in the inside of these because I won't necessarily always have something inside of them, and I wanted them to look like the white was their original color. I feel like I accomplished that. I absolutely love these. I love the texture of each of the jars, and I think they are just so clean and simple and just a perfect addition to my decor. For this project, I am using 2 of these Dollar Tree rugs. Now, I'm using these in a green color, but they do come in black, gray, and tan as well. So here I'm laying them out and showing you that the rugs actually are not the same size. One of my rugs is more narrow than the other. So don't worry about that. If you happen to pick up 2 different size rugs, it will work out just fine for a project like this. Do have a rug that is more narrow. That is the one that I chose to go ahead and cut in half. So all I did is find the center mark. I used my rotary cutter and cut it straight up the middle. If you don't have a rotary cutter, you could use a pair of scissors. It doesn't have to necessarily be a super pretty cut because you are not going to see where you actually cut it. So now I'm going in with my SureBonder hot glue gun and their hot glue fabric glue, which if you've been around, you know that I love the hot glue fabric glue. It is a great alternative to sewing, and especially for a project like this because these rugs would require you to have like a heavy duty like machine needle in order to sew them, and this hot glue is just going to be so much faster and easier than trying to deal with that. You can wash these, you can dry them on a low temp. It's fantastic. Now, a little pro tip, I do use a different glue gun for my special hot glues than I use for my other hot glues. And that way, I'm not always having to change out my glue gun. As you can see, I'm creating a table runner by placing that first rug will be the centerpiece and the 2 halves will be the outside pieces, and just securing those with that fabric hot glue. Now I'm taking the halves in the center, making sure that those are aligned and about an inch up from the fringe of that first piece, and then making sure that I'm using plenty of that fabric hot glue to make sure it's nice and secure. Now, I will admit I go a little excessive on my hot glue. I always do, but you know, I just would rather have a little extra than ever wonder if I used enough. So that's just, I always lean on the side of caution. So for $2 and a super easy, just little snip, snip, hot glue and done, you have a beautiful mini table runner. I absolutely love this, and it was so simple to do. For this project, you will need a piece of glass and some bamboo skewers. The glass that I'm using is actually just an 8x10 piece of glass that I got out of a picture frame. I used the picture frame in a previous project, and I just had the glass lying around. I'm using the miter shears in order to cut the bamboo skewers so that they match up with the length of the glass. Now, I go ahead and I cut the first piece by just measuring out the length of the glass, and then I use that first piece in order to help me measure out my second piece. After that, I'm going in with some E6000 in order to attach it to the glass. Now, the reason why I'm using the E6000 is that it will do really well to secure the bamboo to the glass. If I were to use the hot glue would peel off, and so that is why I chose to use the E6000 for this step. After I did that, I had to do the exact same thing, but this time with the width of the glass. I needed to get 2 pieces that matched the width of the glass. Once I had those 2 pieces cut, I went ahead and I applied them again with that E6000. Once I had all those applied, I now needed to create a frame that would be the top of my box, and it needed to be the exact same size as the frame of the glass. So I cut 2 sides that were equal to the length and 2 that were equal to the width. And this time I use the hot glue. I'm using my detail tip. This is the cordless one. This is my absolute favorite SureBonder glue gun. It's my go-to one, the one I use all the time. And I cannot tell you the number of times I am so glad I have that little detailed glue, or glue tip, I should say, because you just need sometimes the tiniest amount of glue and you don't want a big glob of glue, and this really helps it get where you want it. And as you can see, I can be super precise. So I go ahead and I build out my frame and I make sure that that is nice and set up, and then I can move on to the rest of building out my box. So I cut 4 pieces of the bamboo 4 inches long to be the post in the corner of my boxes. And again, I am securing the bamboo with a little E6000 at where the glass and the bamboo touch, and then a little bit of hot glue where the bamboo to bamboo touches, just to make sure that it is extra secure. Once I have secured all 4 posts, now it is time to add the top of the box onto it. And super easy. All I'm going to do is use those posts to kind of rest it as I'm securing each corner. So again, going in with that detail tip, just the tiniest bit of hot glue. I'm just adding hot glue onto the corners and applying the post right into the corner of the box. So as you can see, I'm pressing it in so it is post and then corner to corner. And I do that all the way around. That way it has like 3 points and where it meets up. Instead of laying it right on top of the post, I felt like this would keep it a little bit more secure. And you'll see in the end, I feel like that this really is pretty secure. I wouldn't swing it from a tree, but I feel like it will hold up. Now adding the sides of the boxes, or the decorative parts of the boxes, not only are they decorative, but they actually will add extra reinforcements to make sure that this box really is secure and will hold up and stand the test of time. So this is not a step I would skip. Using my miter shears, I am cutting 4 pieces of bamboo at 5.5 inches long, and that is for the length of the box. And then for the width of the box, I measure out the angle from top corner to bottom corner, and I cut a bamboo skewer, and then I'm cutting a smaller piece that will go from one corner and then down. It's not an exact science. I just make sure then I cut the exact same sizes for the opposite side. I hope that makes sense and you can see exactly what it is that I'm doing. In order to know how or what size I wanted that smaller piece to be, I decided it was better to go ahead and attach that longer piece from corner to corner. Now again, attaching it from corner to corner will add that extra reinforcement so that the box will be extra secure. Going in again with my cordless detailed SureBonder glue gun. I can't even stress to you how much I love this glue gun. It really is my absolute favorite one and the one that I reach for the most. But you can't even see the hot glue seeping out anywhere. It's fantastic. So once I have that piece attached, then I can measure out the smaller piece that I want, and I measure from the corner and get the angle that I want. And once I have that piece measured out, I go ahead and cut the second piece for the opposite side. After you have the piece cut, then again, just going in with some hot glue, you can attach it straight away. Now I went ahead to give it a little bit more of a polished look. I did angle that piece that was going bamboo to bamboo on that bottom. I gave it just a slight bit of an angle so it had a more flush look. I'll show you right here what it is I'm talking about. So placing the wood in the miter shears, I just angled it ever so slightly and I just trimmed it so that if you see right there, it just has a slight angle and a little bit of a point. That will help it lay a little bit more flush when you're going on these angles. I did that all the way around as I'm going, and it really does give it a little bit more of a polished look. So that way you don't have such a blunt cut. And you'll see that especially in that final product when I'm showing this to you. So I just went around the sides, continuing to secure the bamboo sticks around the edges. Now on the width of the box, or the length of the box, I went from corner down. So I started with the top corner, worked my way down, and then I would go from the top and then to the bottom corner. And from using the corners, I really do felt like that did help make the box more structurally sound, where I felt like it wasn't going to fall apart. And that's the same thing with the width when I went corner to corner. I feel like that is just that added security to really make sure that this is a secure box. It's not gonna fall apart. I'm not gonna add a 10-pound weight to this and then swing it. I don't think it would hold up that well, but it definitely is great to add to a coffee table or a side table and decorate it. It's a beautiful piece. I absolutely love this. It really isn't hard to put together, and it only cost a couple of dollars. For this project, I am using some wood beads that I picked up on Amazon, as well as the white twine that you get in the automotive section at Dollar Tree. Now, if you want to use the beads from Dollar Tree, they do have some colored wooden beads, as well as some pearls that come in the different sizes. If you do use the colored wood beads, you could spray paint them in like a white or a brown if you're going to go that route instead. If you want to do wood beads like I am, let me show you how I did that. I am using a total of 45 beads that I have divided up into groups of 15. So 3 groups of 15. One group I'm going to leave completely the way they are. I'm taking a glass jar and putting in a little bit of Waverly's Wax and Antique in the jar. Just a tiny bit, not even, it's just an eyeball amount, just enough that I can coat a group of the beads. I just dump in one set of the 15 beads, shake it up until I know that they are good and coated, and then I'm going to dump them out, blot them off, wipe them up. Super simple. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some water and then swish down. I did not add any more of the Waverly Wax. I'm just adding water. I'm adding my second group of beads, swishing it around and coating the beads. Now this time I'm pouring them into a container because now it's a lot of liquid. And I am then able to pull them out and put them onto a lint-free cloth and kind of just blot them off. I'm letting everything just set aside and dry. Once they completely dried, all I did was string them on to the twine, alternating the colors. After that, I added a little feather to tie them off. So let me show you how I created the feather. So for the feather, you want to have some cotton string as well as some backing, and you want your backing to coordinate with your string. So here I'm showing you some black felt. That does not coordinate with this, but if I was using a darker string, of course that could be used. But this case, I'm actually using some canvas. This is the stretch canvas that goes around the wood that you can get from Dollar Tree. I had used the wood for a previous project, but I had the canvas still left over, and it will be the perfect backing for this feather. So I am making 2 feathers, one for each side of the bead. So for one feather, you need 1 piece of string that is 12 inches long and 30 pieces that are 6 inches long. Now you will be trimming them up, but 6 inches actually makes it just easier to work with, but you will find that there is some waste with this. But the string, you get so much string from the Dollar Tree that you won't even notice that you hardly touched your string. Took my first string, my 12-inch string, I folded it in half, and then I wanted to secure it. Now, I'll be honest, the silicone was not the best choice to secure it on, so I ended up grabbing a wooden block, and the tape stuck much better to that. What I love about this silicone mat, it's great for peeling off, like the hot glue just peels right off of it, paint washes off of it, so I love using it all the time. But the painter's tape did not want to stick to it, so the wooden block ended up helping, and plus then I could move it around a lot easier as well. So when you're doing this, you're kind of doing like a faux square knot as you go down, but you're alternating each one. So let me give you a little bit of a closer look as to what I mean. What I love about this is that it looks harder than it is. So all you do is take one loop under and one loop over, and then you thread the ends through each of the loops and pull it, and that creates your square knot. What you do want to remember is that you are going to be alternating them. So I put one loop to your or our right. Now I'm taking my bottom loop and putting it to the left, and the top loop will now go to the right. If for some reason you forget and you make, oh no, which way did I go? That's okay. If you get it the wrong way, just push one down and put one in between them. It's okay. These slide up and down, as you can see. It's not rocket science. You can absolutely do this, watch a show, watch YouTube as you work. Super simple, super easy, but it looks more complicated than it is. Continue making your knots all the way down. When you get down and you have finished all 15 knots, or if you're making a larger feather, whatever your size, when you continue making your knots, you are going to comb it out. So you want to get a comb, something that has like a little fine comb, or even like a dog brush, and you're going to comb out your string. So you're going to hold with your finger the center because you don't want anything to move around, and then you're going to work your way from the ends towards the center, just separating those individual strings and making this look even more like delicate. As you go, you'll see what it is that I mean, but right now you can see all the strings are kind of tight, but these thicker strings are actually made up of smaller strings, and you'll see it looks so pretty once it's combed out. So to make sure that my feather is nice and brushed out, I do flip it over so that I can comb out all of those strings as fine as I can. And then to get that feather shape, I just lay it down and I comb it into the shape that I want. Once I have that feather shape, I do go in with my canvas to cut out a little piece of canvas into that feather shape as well. It does take me a couple of times to get exactly the shape, the size that I need, because I don't want it seen from the back, but this is what's going to add that support. Once I have the size that I want, I go in with my glue gun, making sure that I'm adding glue first to the center of that feather and then around the edges just ever so slightly. I attach that canvas and then I lift up the edges and add more hot glue to secure that down. Once I have it secured down, I go in with a pair of very sharp scissors to trim out my feather. Now, as I'm trimming it out, you will see that I do leave some margins. I do not get right up to that canvas. I do leave a little bit all the way around it because I still want to have some free flowing. I don't want it to be super stiff. This is what really adds that extra element. I did the exact same process to create a second feather because I wanted a feather on both ends of my beads. This is like an alternative to doing like tassels instead, but you could just have one feather on one side of your bead and choose to leave it at that. So before I could add the feathers on, I went ahead and added a knot to the ends of the beads so that they would not move. Then I took the remaining string, looped it through the feather, and tied one more knot to close it off, and that is all it took to make these cute little beads. I wrapped them around a vase. This is a great alternative than using a tassel at the end of the beads, and these are perfect because I can use these all year round and style them in so many different ways. For this project, I'm using those Lucid cutting boards from Dollar Tree, but don't feel like you need those. You could absolutely use some wood that you pick up at your local hardware store or some scrap wood maybe that you have lying around your house. I also have some white rope that I got on Amazon. Dollar Tree is now carrying some white rope. Was able to get this for just a little bit less than what you can even get per foot from the Dollar Tree, and I will link that down below for you as well. So I'm using my Dollar Tree L ruler in order to mark exactly where I want to put my holes. I'm putting 2 holes on each side. Now, this L ruler is one of my favorite things that I've ever purchased from Dollar Tree as far as like tools go. I honestly think in my little crafting kit, it is a must-have, and if you don't have it, I would highly suggest that you pick it up the next time you're able to get into a Dollar Tree. So I'm marking 5/8 of an inch all the way around. After that, I use my drill in order to drill out the holes on the first board, and then I use the first board as a guide for the remaining boards. And my 14-year-old son was super sweet to help me out with that so that I was able to even work on some other things. Once I had all my holes drilled, I did go in with some sandpaper if there were any like rough spots. I'm very gentle with a very fine grit sandpaper because I did not want to mess with that finishing coat on these cutting boards. To hang my shelf, I am using one of these book rings that I also picked up at Dollar Tree. You could also use like a key ring, and I know from Amazon you can order some like wooden rings. Just something round that you can hang on your hook. So I wanted to do some really basic macrame on this. So I have 2 pieces of rope that I've cut to 54 inches. So a little bit longer because the not tying is going to shorten up my rope before I can get my shelves to the level and heights that I want them. So to start off with, you're going to do what's called a lark's head knot. So here you see that I have folded my rope in half and I've taped it off so it won't come undone. I have the loop in the front. I take my two ends behind the ring and then I take them through that loop and I pull, and that is how you get that lark's head knot. All this, the purpose of this is just to get it attached to wherever you're hanging. So whether it's on a ring or on a rod or on a stick, that is how you always begin anything with macrame. So now I'm simply going to do just 2 square knots. So I'm starting from the left side. So you see I did a figure 4. I take the opposite side in front, then take it behind, go up. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. And then you go to the opposite side. So I'm gonna do like a reverse or a backwards 4. That opposite side on the left goes in front of that loop, behind the 2 middle strands, and then through that little 4, and then pulls up. And then I'm gonna do it one more time. Gotta get my knot in place. I'm gonna go again with my regular shape 4. The right side goes in front of the loop, behind the 2 middle, and then in front. And then you repeat that opposite backwards 4. So you take the right side around the 2 front, the left side in front of that and behind the 2 middle, and then loop it through and pull it up. It's that simple, and that is all I'm doing as far as the macrame goes. I personally find it best to go ahead and hang your shelf while it is hanging. That way you can make sure that all the ropes come out equal. By measuring, it doesn't quite work as well as it is by making sure it's level while it hangs. I hope that makes sense. So I went ahead and I threaded the ropes through. I tied a knot in one corner. I used a leveler to make sure that I stayed nice and level. I loosely tied knots as I thought it was level, and then adjusted accordingly if something wasn't level. If you have a second pair of hands from a little helper, sometimes that can help as well. Once I had that top shelf nice and level, I went ahead and I did the same thing for the second shelf. Once I had the distance that I wanted, my shelf was about, I think, 5 inches from that top shelf. Once I had that bottom shelf leveled, I went ahead and I cut off any extra that I had. I went ahead and I left a little extra rope because I wanted to fringe it, but of course that's just a personal preference if you want fringed rope on the end or not. Now, I did not give myself a lot of slack in my rope or a lot of extra rope. If you want it even longer, then you're going to want to cut your rope longer in the beginning. I personally love the way that this turned out. I'm going for a very relaxing feel on my porch, and I think that this really contributes to that. Now, what do you think of my very first macrame project? I would love to know that in the comments below. For this project, I am using some of these rub-ons from Dollar Tree, as well as the smaller clay pots that you get in a pack of 3. To start off with, I'm taking some Waverly chalk paint in white, and I'm giving each of the pots a really good coat in the paint. Now, I only did 1 coat, and I was completely fine with that. Some parts of the pot might have been a little bit more sheer, and that was just fine. But it's a really thick paint, and it really does do a great job at giving it a really good coating. As you can see, I have picked out 3 different rub-ons in order to put on my pots. Now, we are absolutely going to see some happy accidents happening here, and just stay with me. So to put these on, you just peel them off of their backing and you just rub them on. I start off by just using a regular little scraper. You can also, of course, use a popsicle stick. In the end, I find that my fingernail might just be the best tool. So experiment with it. I was a little bit impatient and probably should have let my pots dry a little bit more. They felt dry to the touch, but apparently they were not completely dry. So as a result of that, I pulled off some paint and then realized that I should just go with a distressed look. And let me tell you, I'm not mad about it because I think that they actually turned out even better. So this was the first one, pulled it off, got a distressed look. Second one, really got a distressed look and pulled off another rub-on to add to it. I thought that was a good, nice layered look. And then on number 3, guess what? no distressing. It went on perfectly. That's because I probably used my fingernail. I don't know if it was the paint wasn't dry or my fingernail was just a better tool on this one, but I went ahead and distressed it anyway because the other two were distressed, and honestly, I liked the distressed look best. But if you don't, by all means, don't distress it. Try it with your fingernail. Worst case, it can actually sand off and you can repaint. It's not a big deal. I think that these turned out beautiful. Of course, you could put like a little faux plant in it, maybe even a real plant in it if you want to, because I only painted the outside. I'm using them as candle holders, and I think that they are really pretty. So for this project, I have 6 of these boxes from Dollar Tree. I absolutely love these. They're so versatile for so many different projects. But for this project, I needed 6. I have 2 of each color. I am not painting these for this project, but if that wouldn't work for you, by all means, you could paint them. But this time, we're going to leave them the way they are. Because I am stacking these boxes, I'm taking the bottom box and removing that center piece. And then after that, I'm going to remove the hanging hardware that is on the back of each of the boxes. You can go ahead and use a screwdriver if you want to do that, but honestly, they pop off pretty easily if you just take the screwdriver right underneath. I just can pop it under and then to pull it off. It's faster to do that. I even grab a pair of pliers and pull it. I still find that faster than trying to take this tiny little screwdriver and turning. But however you want to do it, just get the hardware off. After that, I go in and I push the backing out of the remaining boxes. I leave the backing in that first box, but the other 5 boxes, I remove the backing. Now, sometimes the backing pops out super easy, and sometimes it kind of gets caught a little bit. When that happens, I go in with my FISKERS craft knife, and I just take it along the edges to loosen it up. That just means that there's a little bit of extra adhesive holding the paper on, and so I just take that along the edge, and then you'll see that it pops off really easily after that. Again, I'm removing 5 of the bottoms from the boxes, leaving the 6th bottom intact because that will be the bottom of our box once we stack it. After that, I went in with a paint scraper and I scraped off any of the excess like adhesive that was still remaining left behind. This is the difference in making this look like a project that is just kind of slapped together versus a project that looks like you might have purchased it at a store, making it look a little bit more high end. Just taking that extra step to get rid of that adhesive, and then just taking a fine grit 120 sandpaper and just sanding it to just really finish it off. To go inside the box into that bottom box, I'm using this cork that I picked up at Dollar Tree. It is an adhesive bottom, and so in order to have this fit, I just measured out my box and then I cut according to that size. Once I had it cut out, you just peel the back right off, stick it inside your box, and I thought that that matched up so well. So now the only thing left to do is to put the box together, and the way that I did that was I used some good old-fashioned wood glue, just putting it around the edges, making sure that I wiped off any of the excess. I just used a lint-free damp cloth in order to do that. Once I had done all the wood glue, I did make sure I just left it alone to let it dry. Then after that, you can style this in so many different ways. If you've been around, you know that I love to use boxes in my decor. I think this would make a great box you can put your remotes in. Of course, I like to turn boxes on their side in order to use it to elevate different things. Of course, I picked up these ferns from Walmart and I thought they looked perfect inside of this box. This is one of my absolute favorite projects, and it is so simple to do. So you start off with these 8x10 stretch canvases. I got these at Dollar Tree, as well as these floral picks, also from the Dollar Tree, but sometimes they're harder to find. But I know that Walmart carries something very similar. You can also find something at a craft store with a coupon, or if they're on sale, they're about $1 to $1.50. So to start off with, I'm removing the canvas from the wooden frame that it is wrapped around. Now you can absolutely remove all of those staples if you want to, but honestly, I've tried in the past and I always end up hurting myself, so it's not worth it to me to do it that way. But by all means, you do you. I just prefer just to cut it off using my craft knife. I'm also using a metal ruler so I can have straight lines. It's not necessary. I'm just a little type A, so it works for me. So I just go around all 4 sides and get that off. Once you have removed your canvas, you have a wooden frame that is left behind, but it's a little bit raw and rough, so you're going to go in with a 120 grit sandpaper and sand any of those rough spots just to smooth it out. At this point, you could absolutely leave the frame the way that it is, or you could paint it, but I'm going to go in with Waverly's Wax and Antique. It's a beautiful brown, but I'm going to use it like a stain. I absolutely love using it like a stain because it dries faster and it's less messy. So you're just going to brush it on and wipe off the excess just like you would a stain, but luckily you don't have that same wait time. Once it completely dries, we need to go ahead, or for this project, we need to go ahead and put the canvas back on. But in order to do this, we first need to trim the canvas down so that it fits just on the back side and it's not showing or hanging over. So I need to trim down the back so that they will fit, trim down the canvas so that they will fit on the back. So I first do that, and then I go in to attach them to the back. I just go in with a staple gun. This is my SureBonder staple gun. Now I talk about their hot glue guns all the time because I love them. I hardly ever mention this. And every time I pull it out, I think to myself, I seriously need to come up with more projects to use this thing because it is fantastic. I have used other staple guns, but this has like this little trigger thing on it that honestly, it makes it so easy to use it. It's hard to explain. It really is a fantastic staple gun. So if you don't have a staple gun, I would suggest that you look into this one. I should mention that I'm also using the underneath part of the canvas now as what I chose to put facing upwards. It's more an oatmeal color instead of that stark white. Now for the florals, I have already cut these picks apart for a previous project. And so now I'm just going to kind of just choose the parts that I want to go on each canvas. For 2 of them, I wanted it to be green, and the other 2, I was just going to have little hints of purple. But of course, you can mix and match however you want. So in order to place the picks down or the leaves down at this point, I am using some hot glue to do that, but I'm being very careful. I am putting the hot glue on the end of the stems because I feel like that is the most secure spot to put it. And then I'm just thinking very carefully as I move up the leaves to think about where I want to put it, because I don't want the leaves to be completely stuck. I feel like that would lose some of that motion or movement that I'm looking for. If I wanted them to be completely stuck, I could have gone in with Mod Podge or like a spray adhesive. I really do want them to still have some of that dimensional, or that dimension that they get from the fact that this is not a print. If you want a print, there's plenty of those out there. This gives you just a different look than using just a print. Now, I also made sure that I'm using just the tiniest bit in each spot because I don't want the hot glue seeping out. And anytime I saw any string, I made sure I immediately got rid of it because I didn't want any strings. Again, that makes the difference between making this look like something you can purchase in a store versus something that you just kind of slap together at home. I really wanted this to have a very high-end look. To be absolutely honest, these turned out so much better than I even thought that they would. I think they look great on camera, but I think that there's something about them in person just because of all that dimension that you don't even capture. I think the camera loses. They are just absolutely beautiful. Did one of these stand out to you? If so, let me know that in the comments below. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. I hope you have a fabulous day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!